the revolutionary ankle lock system, an integrated brace built into the boots, delivering unrivaled support, protecting ligaments from twists, tears, and trauma.
Regan Slaymaker for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store and R Kings, and I have the pleasure to be joined by astounded author and boxing pundit Andy Clarke. Andy, yeah, how are you? It's a bit quiet on the boxing front the last couple of weeks, but I think we're going to be really picking up here in November. How have you been?
Yeah, good, good. Yeah, things have been a little bit quiet for me as well, more so normally than they are this time of year. But that's never a bad thing. You take a bit of downtime when you can get it. But yeah, you're right. Things do look set to pick up in the next few weeks. It is kind of interesting, isn't it? The calendar, because I know it's one of the things we're going to go on to talk about, but I saw Steve Kim asking the question on Twitter the other week, looking at the rest of the year, once you got past Canelo Crawford, what was there in terms of big fights? And it does look a little bit, it does look a little bit sparse, doesn't it? There's the Eubank Ben rematch, then there's the Supersonic card in Riyadh the week after. And yeah, that's kind of it really. So interesting times all around.
It definitely is. I don't want to follow up those questions with those because we've got a big topic point that I think that Anthony Crolla brought up. So I want to park that for a minute, but I do want to go into kind of yeah some of the boxing news that has kind of kicked off. I was at the launch press conference for Frazer Clarke versus Jeamie TKV British heavyweight title, but I think the more kind of interesting thing is that boxing is back on kind of terrestrial TV. Obviously, Channel 5 have had a flirt with it as well, but back on the BBC. I feel like this is a major change in the sport, but I want to get your opinion on it. It's big news to have. A major domestic title fight at heavyweight on primetime TV on the BBC. It's massive for domestic boxing at a minimum as well.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is big news. You mentioned Channel 5 there, and I would be a little bit irked, I think, if I was them, by the reception that this has got, because they have been putting boxing on terrestrial TV for at least 10 years.
Mm.
But the BBC is the BBC, isn't it? It's got that cachet. Obviously, they did used to show boxing. They were the only network for a long time who showed any sport at all. They kind of invented sport on TV in the UK because of how long they've been around. So it's got that cachet that I think very few broadcasters worldwide have got, if any, to be honest. So it is big news, definitely big news, and it's great because you want boxing on as many platforms as possible. When you work as a broadcaster like I do, it's always been really simple for me. You want what you're doing to be the best thing, ideally, but you want everybody else to do well too, because that's that's the way the sport moves forward. A rising tide lifts all boats and all of that. So it's a good thing. It's a big thing. And a British heavyweight title fight is a perfectly acceptable headline. That for me is good that we've got that kind of fight top of a bill, because there is nothing wrong with that as a top of the bill fight, nothing at all, because people buy into domestic rivalries in a way that they don't buy into fights between a British fighter and somebody who a more mainstream audience wouldn't necessarily know. So when I heard the announcement, I'd been hearing for a little while, like I'm sure we all had, that there might be something in the offing, but you didn't really know what it meant, because there's lots of announcements about lots of things these days, aren't they? Where you would get one seemingly every day, and but now we know that it's going to be on BBC Two, the 2 hours of it. That's big,
Mm.
because it's not that it isn't big if it just ends up on iPlayer, because obviously, anybody can access iPlayer, no
Mm.
subscription. But the fact that it's going to be on BBC Two prime time on a Saturday night, that's a different ball game.
Definitely. Before we get into kind of the fight itself, with kind of I don't want to be disrespectful to Jeamie here, but particularly Frazer, former Olympian, Olympic medalist, kind of he's he's made a name for himself. Obviously, a lot of people probably know of him more than TKV. I mean, with that Olympic pedigree and that amateur pedigree, it's kind of the perfect person to kickstart this role on the BBC. It's something that kind of, I don't want to say casual audience in quotation marks, but it's something they can really get their teeth behind as well.
Yeah, I think so, because obviously you won that bronze medal on the BBC basically, and other people showed the Olympics, but it's it's a BBC event in basically everybody's eyes, isn't it? And that's what's so good about it if you manage to do well, because it gives you that springboard where people have already seen you. And okay, due to the fact that Team GB wins so many medals now, I can remember a time when that really wasn't the case. And if you'd won a bronze medal, that would be huge news. It doesn't quite get you the same profile as it used to, because the team overall is so phenomenally successful. But that is something that you can advertise this event with, that people understand. An Olympic bronze medal is something that everybody understands. It's a hallmark, isn't it? A stamp of quality. They'll feel like this is somebody who's going to be worth watching, and that's key. That's key. That's crucial, because you want people to tune in. You want them to see a good fight, and you want them to come back the next time. Because the reality is that boxing week to week is quite a niche sport, isn't it? We know that, but it's got the ability to pull in a big audience for a big fight, or a fight that people hear about. You know, it's that almost defines what a big fight is. It's big if people think it's big. If people know about it, then by definition, if you like, it becomes a big event. And something on the BBC has got the potential always to become a big event, because outside of a handful of names, general sports fans don't really know who that domestic pool or slightly above that of boxers are. They don't, and that's not me running the sport down. That's just fact, isn't it? I follow sport, avidly, but I couldn't name you that many tennis players, for example. I couldn't name you that many Formula One drivers outside of sort of handful. So it's understandable that people are exactly the same with our sport. And so what they want to see is they want to see a good fight with something on the line. And that's what you always get in a British title fight. They're not going to expect to see Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury. Those are two of the names that they would know. They're not going to expect to see Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn necessarily. And once you get outside of those kinds of names, then really it's just about the quality of the spectacle. And they are under a bit of pressure, the two fighters. They both desperately want to win, obviously, because that's the main thing always. But I think they'll be aware of the stage and the platform, not necessarily to the extent that they will feel like they really need to go out to entertain. But fighters have always got that kind of in their mind that if you can win and win well, then that's the dream, isn't it?
It definitely is as well. I was at the launch press conference, as I said, and I mean, Jeamie TKV said he promised war on October the 25th. Frazer Clarke, obviously, as any fighter would welcome that. I mean, how do you see this fight going between Frazer Clarke and Jeamie TK? Obviously, two fighters that have fought on Sky Sports as well.
Yeah, you would have to make Frazer the favourite, I think, but at the same time, he's had that one fight since the defeat against Fabio Wardley, and I was around that fight, and I think by the time it came around, he had comprehensively dealt with the fallout of getting stopped in the first round with that terrible facial injury, and that by that stage for him it wasn't really an issue anymore. Whereas because we haven't seen him since then, obviously it was kind of all we talked about really, and everybody was the same that week with regards to that fight. And I think he found it at times a bit tricky to stay patient with it, because for him it's old news, and he came through that well. But TKV will still feel like there's a fragility there, maybe not literally or physically, but mentally, and there still could be. That's definitely still possible. And this was a fight that TKV had been calling for ages, wasn't it? But pre the loss to Fabio, this wasn't a direction that Frazer wanted to go in. But actually now, this is a huge fight for him. It's an absolute must win, because should he not win, it is difficult really to see where he would go after that, to be honest. Whereas for TKV, a defeat is not going to be terminal for him, you wouldn't say. And that can free somebody up a bit. That can allow you to go about your business in a confident and kind of loose manner, because nobody's ever going to get in there feeling completely relaxed, like it's a no lose situation. I always find that phrase kind of laughable. I know what people mean by it, but it's bollocks, isn't it? Because in a sport like boxing, you can lose in the worst possible way that's not available in other sports, which is you get knocked out cold. And that is definitely a lose. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, though. I think it should be good.
Definitely. I think what you said, kind of a fighter going in there, with kind of that calmness, that the lack of pressure. I think TKV proved that when he fought David Adelaide as well. He kind of went in there with that mentality as well. I do want to move on to sticking with the heavyweights, but some news today. Johnny Nelson has. It was from a place of care. I have to preface, but he called for AJ to basically walk away from the sport because of all of what he's achieved, and because the fear that any opponent that he goes in with now could quote turn him over, and he wouldn't want to see that. I mean, I think I want to get your thoughts on this, Andy, because do you think those calls for Anthony Joshua to retire are premature? Obviously, he is coming off that defeat, but he's taken a long while out. What kind of, how do you see kind of the career of Anthony Joshua at the moment?
I think with situations like this, it's interesting. You always need to try and kind of differentiate between what you think might be the best thing for him, and back in the real world, what is it in all likelihood that if you were him, you would do, because they're two really different things. So I know exactly what Johnny's saying. I know exactly what he's saying. And like you say, it comes from a place of concern, and he has achieved an awful lot more than he could ever possibly have imagined. But Johnny will know himself, because he was a fighter, that there's no way Joshua's going to retire off the back of that defeat to Dubois. There's absolutely no possible way that is going to happen. It's just not. I do not see any possibility of it. And I think he's right not to, so long as he's got the desire to fight still, so long as that fire still burns inside him, because he doesn't need the money. Everybody knows he's made fortunes, and he's been good value for all of it. You look at what he's done for the sport here and everywhere, and the start he had and how long he's been boxing. It's unbelievable what he's managed to do. But he doesn't need the money. So you keep doing it because you want to keep doing it, and you get to decide when you finish, because it might be the only thing in your entire career, even if you're him, that you have total control over, because it's a career of compromises and horse trading and all sorts of things. Even if you're him, there will have been quite a lot of that going on. But when you hang him up, that will be something that he will have complete control over because of his financial situation. And I don't see him doing something crazy and altering that and returning to the ring at any point for financial reasons. And you just look at what happened before that Dubois fight. People were gassing him up before that Dubois fight. They were looking at the progress and the performance against Wallin, and then the destruction of Ngannou, which was a very, very different outcome to the one Ngannou had against Tyson Fury. And going into the Dubois fight, people expected him to win, and he didn't. And I don't know what happened to him that night, but he was poor. He was really poor. And I don't think he would deny that. And he cannot call it a day off the back of that. There's just no way. You look at fighters and the kind of run they generally need to have before they finally decide that they're going to pack it in. And very often it'll be a defeat, a win coming back against someone who's not on their level. Then they go back in at the higher level and they lose again. So 3 out of 4, and then they might decide, okay, that's probably enough now, or they might need one more after that and another defeat to really just rubber stamp it. If you look at the end of a fighter's career, that happens a lot. You look at Wilder, for example, he's basically got that record. I know he picked up a win the other week, but I would like to see him retire because I think it's a bit dangerous, to be honest. And yeah, it's dangerous for everybody. Of course it is. And the way he got beaten by Dubois was pretty alarming to watch from ringside. But no, for me, I don't think he should retire. And he's definitely not going to.
Definitely as well. Obviously, like you mentioned, kind of the how the kind of I don't know, the pattern of former fighters, and that is it a case you think, like you said, we'll probably see him Eddie Hearn saying today in interviews that he'll probably return at the back end of this year, and then he's looking for the Tyson Fury fight. I mean, that's the fight that we all want, but I imagine kind of whatever people think of that Tyson Fury fight, that seems like the pattern's going to be there, even if it might be 2 wins on the back of it.
Yeah, I think so. It's they just take a lot of convincing that it's over, and you can understand why, because these are people who their superhuman strength, their superpower is their incredible self-belief, which does border dangerously or veer into self-delusion at times. And it has to, because you can't achieve the things that they do unless you believe in something, even when nobody else does, even when everyone else thinks you're completely mad. And it's the same when you get chat about around kind of rematches, oh, he shouldn't take the rematch. But he's going to, isn't he? Like, it doesn't, you can come up with all the sensible arguments you want. He's going to do it because he is never going to believe that Usyk, for example, after he beat him comprehensively at Spurs, is capable of doing that to him again. He's never going to believe that. And you might think that, but he doesn't think that. And it doesn't matter that you think he's deluded for not thinking that. He doesn't think that. And it's his ability not to think that that's got him to where he's got to. So it does take quite a lot of pain towards the end of a career for people to kind of finally understand, actually, you know what, I think that is it, because you'll find ways to explain it. You look at Wilder's a great example, actually, because second fight against Fury, it's his first defeat, obviously, and he got a beating, didn't he? That's what happened, and that never happened to him before. And you've got to explain that one to yourself. And although he was pretty, honest in the ring right at the end, it very quickly turned into the gloves and the heavy costume and just loads of different things. And the referee shouldn't have stopped it. And he sacked Mark Breland and all of that. So that's what he went for with that one. And then he got beat by Fury again. I think he beat Hellenius in between, didn't he? I think he came back and he beat Robert Hellenius, or when did that happen? But
I think Hellenius might have been after, but
I think Hellenius might have been after. But then he lost to Fury again. But it was a titanic effort, and you just think, no, there's still something left there. And then he loses to Parker, and then he loses to Zhang, and then that's four out of five at that point, because you're right, the Hellenius one was in after that. And that can often be enough. And I was hoping that would be enough, because Zhang knocked him out as well.
Yeah.
Parker was points, but Zhang knocked him out. And I thought that might be enough. But I wasn't totally convinced. And as it turns out, it's not. And that just tells you everything, doesn't it? Because he still thinks that he's the Bronze Bomber. So it can be a long process, and it doesn't really matter what the people around you say either. In those situations, people say, well, the people who care about them need to get around them and tell them this and tell them that. And again, I get it, because they might be able to get through to you. Your wife, you might be able to get through to you. Your siblings, they might be able to get you to, but equally, they might not, because they don't do things by committee. So it's one of the kind of unfortunate facts of a boxing life, that quite often somebody has that kind of finish to their career. Not always, obviously, and we don't know with Joshua. We don't know. He'll. I don't really feel like he needs. If he's going to fight Fury, I don't feel like he needs to fight somebody in the meantime. I know that he's been out of the ring for a while, and people do like to go on about ring rust, but for someone like him, who's never been out of shape a day in his life since he started boxing, I don't think ring rust is that much of a thing. No, I just don't. And And I don't think Fury needs to really have a warm-up fight either. Just do it. If you're going to do it, just get on with it. Just do it.
Definitely as well. I do want, I mean, that would be a mega fight. I mean, talking about kind of British boxing as a whole, we kind of touched on it in the intro to this with kind of after Ben Eubank, what is there kind of domestically? I mean, Anthony Crolla's raised this in an interview with Adam Cattrall. Again, like I did with Johnny Nelson, when I read out kind of what he said, I don't want to misquote him at all in this. So he said, British boxing is at a major crisis. Small hall shows have been murdered, and UK shows, domestic shows, have been cut in half. And he explained his point that kind of top fighters are going on small hall shows to keep active, but that's obviously difficult because they now have probably got to pay for their opponents and things like that. And then he also brought up the point that whilst these Saudi shows are great, that in many cases that's five UK headliners on one card. I mean, it's a lot to unpack, and it's probably a bit more nuanced than kind of agreeing with the full statement. But yeah, how just unpicking those first bits, Andy, kind of British boxing being in a crisis, small hall shows being murdered, and kind of domestic shows being cut in half. What is your take on that? Just on the basis, just on the kind of the tip of the iceberg there.
I understand completely what he's saying, and I do agree with. I mean, I agree with pretty much all of it. I think actually because we've only got one male world champion at the minute, and it wasn't that long ago that we had 11, 13, I think, at one point, if you count the WBA regulars. And that doesn't make for great reading. And we've got fighters who are coming towards the end. You know, Fury's actually retired. Joshua, we've just been discussing, he hasn't got that long left. And nor is Eubank Jr., who's always been a big name, capable of pulling in a big audience. And that's just a cycle, isn't it? And that's what happens. And you could say that's kind of happening to an extent globally. Canelo's not got long left. Nor Usyk, you know, things like that. This is the way that it goes, and you need people to come up behind them. And sometimes it can take a little bit of time, and it's a global situation, I would say, but we see it best illustrated in what's happened in British boxing, because I look at all of the mega Saudi cards that I was lucky enough to cover from AJ and Garnu right through to the last crescendo. If you look at that, it was pretty much a 12-month period, wasn't it, actually?
Yeah.
Unbelievable cards. And actually, looking at it now, he probably did stack them too deep, Turki Al Sheikh, because I wouldn't say he's run out of fights, but at the same time, he could do with some of them now, couldn't he? Some of the ones that were on the undercard. And I know fights don't keep, you can't put them in cold storage, but I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. And because the Saudi angle at that point was quite UK centric, due to the involvement of specifically Frank Warren, but also Eddie Hearn, we did have a lot of UK fighters end up on those cards, and a lot of big UK fights on those cards. I'll never forget watching Josh Buatsi and Callum Smith walk into the ring at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it was open the show, yeah.
Open the show, which was absolutely incredible. And you looked at the card and you thought, wow, that is amazing. And it was amazing. And no one was complaining at the time. I certainly wasn't. But at the same time, you are thinking to yourself, this is a bit mad, because that is an absolutely tremendous Saturday night headline fight that pack out the O2 Arena or Liverpool Echo or Manchester Arena. And there was quite a lot of that. You know, understandable at Wembley because it was at Wembley. But you saw a lot of UK fighters fighting on those undercards, populating those undercards. And it was good for them. But it meant that domestic shows, I think, did suffer. It's not quite the same, but it did remind me of when Eddie Hearn started DAZN USA. And in the early days, he took quite a lot of UK fighters over there to fight on those cards. And again, it was good for them because they were getting paid more there than they would have done here. But it was bad for the domestic shows. So it has had an impact. It's not like there haven't been good shows, but there's not that much noise around British boxing at the minute, is there? I think that's a thing that I have noticed. I think that is partly over the last few months due to the inactivity of Sky. And with the BBC getting involved, if they can really push it, then hopefully it can pick up some momentum. But I watched that interview with Adam and Anthony Crolla, and I thought he made a lot of good points.
He definitely did as well. I was going to say, what do you think the kind of the solution is then? Obviously, there's a simple solution, just put more shows on, but we know it's not as kind of simple as that. But like, I was having a conversation with someone who works in media like myself, and he said we're kind of not having these. We probably won't have these mega stars anymore. Like you said, the Furies, the Joshuas, they're coming to the end of their career. And Eubank Jr., these mega stars that everyone's going to flock, whether they live in London or Bournemouth to Manchester to watch the fight. He said we're probably more going to have these regional stars like Fabio Wardley in Ipswich, kind of Lewis Crocker, obviously winning that world title in Belfast, Nick Ball in Liverpool. We'll probably more have that now. That kind of these pockets of boxing is that kind of a is that a solution where they kind of stack these stadium shows out, make the big noise about them, or do we need? Is the BBC kind of getting involved now? Will that kind of reignite the fire? What do you think could be the solution there, or is it a simple case of don't stack the cards too deep and save some for the UK? What do you think could help the situation, Andy?
I think it's mostly what you said at the end there. Just
Mm,
just try and save as many fights as you can for the UK, and I think that is more doable now because the you look at what's coming up or what's happened this year with the Ring and Riyadh season.
mm,
Obviously, we had Eubank Ben, good undercard, British fighters, of course, but not loads
mm,
of fights. We had
mm.
four, didn't we? And it's the
Yeah,
same for the repeat. The Ring magazine since then has been in New York twice, hasn't it? And Canelo was in Riyadh. Usyk Dubois, obviously. I mean, that was a Queensbury show rather than a Riyadh season show, but it was a massive, massive show. It's not been the case that those shows have been as populated by British fighters as they were last year.
mm,
We need to save good fights for the UK, and you could look at, it's not like there haven't been some good shows. There have been some good shows. People just need to people need to know about them. People
mm,
need to they need to be aware. It's as simple as that. And the BBC angle, it will help. As I said, the inactivity of Sky is something that I think is it's an obvious factor because they are a huge broadcaster with a massive reach. As for stars not coming through, they will. They always
mm,
do. These people will appear.
mm,
Joshua was an absolute phenomenon and just the perfect storm. He won a gold medal in London. He is who he is in terms of his personality, his character, what he looks like. He's a heavyweight. And he just made this unbelievable progress and managed to handle the pressure. And I'll argue all day long with anyone who kind of underrates what he's achieved and questions his kind of resume, because really somebody who started boxing in 2008 doesn't have an awful lot of business becoming unified heavyweight champion of the world less than 10 years later. It's absolute madness, really, when
mm.
you think about it.
Yeah,
But that's what he managed to do. And that's the kind of thing that, I mean, you can't think, well, we'll just wait for the next one of them. You can't think that because he is pretty unique. But other people will come through. They will. And when people talk about regional stars, that in a way, I almost don't really know what they mean, because if you can sell out a regional arena, you are a star, because that's
yeah,
hard work. That's
true.
really, really difficult to do. And that's how you do it. That's how you become a big name, is you start local and you keep going. And those are the people that we need. So I never get too down about it, because you can't be complacent, obviously, but I never get too down about it. The thing I was worried about most in the last couple of years, by an absolute mile, was boxing disappearing from the Olympics, because that would have a massive impact on producing stars at various different levels. But that's been resolved, which is great. You need people just to stick with the sport and have some confidence in what is a crazy sport, and for broadcasters a difficult sport, because there's no guarantee of anything. Whereas if you sign a rights deal for the Premier League or whatever else it is, you know what you're getting.
Mm,
Football's not a great example because football's so massive. But if you sign, I don't know, like a deal to show like tennis majors or golf majors, you know what you're getting then, and it's kind of, and they're going to happen when they say they're going to happen, and all the best players will be there. That is what's going to happen. You do a deal to do the Ryder Cup, for example, and you know exactly what you're going to get every 2 years. It's going to be supersonic mega stuff, and people are going to love it. You do a deal for boxing, and you don't actually know what you're going to get. You just don't. And you just have to believe that it will be good. And I think people probably have quite a hard time with that. And it's probably why the BBC stayed away from it for as long as they did, because it is a pretty exasperating sport, I think, if you're a TV exec, or at least it can be, but it can also give you so much, and it can give you some unbelievable entertainment for not that much money sometimes.
It definitely can. I mean, and I do hope kind of the BBC being involved now is going to kind of bring in this change as well that we were saying. And I feel like every time I talk to you, I do bring up your book. We can see it in the background. I mean, I have the reason why I want to finish it is
Please do.
yeah, no, I have finally finished it. I'm not the quickest reader in the
Okay,
world,
cool.
but I do want to kind of end to speaking about it. I mean, the book itself, I mean, it's full of some brilliant anecdotes. I mean, my favorite ones are with Carl Froch. Those bits are just fantastic. But I mean, it's obviously it's called The Knockout. It's a detailed analysis of the knockout and its impact from kind of the opinions of doctors, which is really interesting, fighters, the promoters, the referees as well. But I mean, I kind of when I was reading the book, I was there's a lot to unpick of the knockout, more than what people kind of think when it's just something that kind of a regular occurrence in boxing. But what is kind of something when you were writing the book? Did it surprise you? Did you learn from it? What did you take away from writing the book itself?
A lot. A lot, because what I'd always really been interested in was just the extreme nature of boxing, basically, and what it required of people. And I was always fascinated by how do you be okay with that? How do you literally sign something that says you're going to try and knock me out, I'm going to try and knock you out, and we're both fine with that? It may well happen to one of us, and if it does, then it does. How do you do that? Because boxing's just so, when you use the word brutal, people think you're referring to the physical side of it, but they don't even think about that. Fighters, they don't even think about that. If they did, they'd never get in there. They're not afraid of that. They're just not. Obviously, there's levels to it. Some have got incredible levels of pain resistance, but all of them, even the ones we look at and think that they might not be the bravest, they've got it on levels that we can't even imagine. But what they are absolutely afraid of is losing, and losing comprehensively, and losing in a way that they find humiliating and embarrassing. And that's the knockout. That's the thing, that they're just there. They might say that they're not afraid of it, and they're not afraid of it physically, but they are afraid of it because it's their ultimate nightmare, being sparked out by an opponent. And although people could say, well, there's no shame in that, if you walk in the rain, you're going to get wet and all this kind of stuff, particularly at heavyweight, but it's just, they find it very, very difficult, a lot of them. And you can understand why, because what a trauma that is, particularly if you're boxing on a big show and it's in front of potentially millions of people, and you get knocked out and you lose that time and you never really remember what happened. You can insert some memories after the event and kind of build a bit of a picture and tell yourself that you remember this and that, but you don't actually. It's impossible. And any kind of doctor will tell you that. And it was just all of that, really. And I kind of walked away from it kind of more in awe of fighters than I was before, because I just thought, I haven't investigated this and discovered that there's anything about it on any level that I would be all right with. Nothing. It's just, and you have to be honest about these things. It's funny when you speak to, every now and again, you'll speak to someone who played a half decent level of amateur sport, and they'll talk about their winning mentality and all this stuff, and you just kind of laugh your head off, don't you, if you do the job that we do and you're in close proximity to people who actually do that. And you know that the mentality they've got is just, it's not actually something that you're envious of, because I don't want to live my life like that. I couldn't. I'm not jealous of that. Like the way they have to live their lives and the kind of level of sacrifice they have to make and the level of selfishness that they have to have, and they're all kind of happy to admit that. And in boxing, the danger that they don't even think about, but they're going to have to be okay to put themselves in. It's just like, what I mean, it's insane, really, when you think about it. And I just love talking. I just love talking to them all about it, because like they were quite different. A lot of them, some of them, for some of them, it was a problem, and for others, it just really wasn't. Giving or taking, with some of them, it's, there was a sense of guilt about knocking somebody out. With others, really, no, there wasn't. Like Hay, for example, he'd been knocked out, so he knew that it could happen, and that was I think my biggest takeaway from the whole thing was that if you're going to be a really top level fighter, you have to be aware that this could happen to you. You have to accept the fact that it could happen to you. But their mentality is such that that doesn't make it some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. It doesn't make it more likely that it will happen, the fact that you entertain it. But it's crucial that you entertain it, because if you think that it can't happen, it will almost certainly happen. And when it does, it'll be very hard to get over. So you've got this mad kind of juxtaposition of somebody allowing that in, but then at some point, it could be deep in camp, or it could be just before you go out to the ring. It could be just before the bell goes, flicking that switch whereby this thing that you have admitted could happen is definitely not going to happen. And that's, again, that kind of compartmentalization is what psychologists call it. We all kind of do it to degrees in our everyday lives. I think the example I gave is if you go for a job interview or an audition or whatever, and there's loads of people in the room, there's loads of people going for the job, well, you see on LinkedIn, like 6,000 people have applied for this job. If you read that stat, you'll just think to yourself, well, what's the point? I'm obviously never going to get this job because there's another 5,999 people have applied for it. But then if you get called for an interview, when the bell goes on that interview, you have to be totally convinced that you are going to get it. So like we all kind of know it, but they just do it like they do everything, fighters, to just the nth degree. And that it was just something that kind of made me laugh. This idea that, oh no, yeah, of course, you need to admit that it could happen to you, but then you have to decide that it's not going to. I guess that was kind of my favourite bit, because that's the sort of mad world that they live in, really.
I mean, if I hope you haven't given too much away from the book there, Andy, because I want people to go and read it. But it is filled of like unbelievable anecdotes, and obviously you talk to the fighters in it and kind of get their kind of most, like you said, brutal opinions on it sometimes. But Andy, I'm very aware that we're about to run out of time, so thank you again for your time. And buy the Knockout, available at all good bookstores, and hopefully catch up with you soon, Andy.
Always a pleasure. Cheers.
The revolutionary ankle lock system, an integrated brace built into the boots, delivering unrivaled support, protecting ligaments from twists, tears, and trauma.